Heather, how's it going? Thanks for coming.
Great, thank you.
Thanks for coming to Ottawa Comiccon. We love you. And I think you've covered this in the awesome documentary Never Sleep Again. And if anyone here that hasn't seen Never Sleep Again, go find it. It's a great documentary about the Nightmare franchise. I had a question about the one scene in the first film in the bathtub. So, just from a filmmaking perspective, how did Wes Craven and crew and everyone, how did you really pull that off? Like I said, I know you covered that in documentaries, but I was just wondering how did you come across in that scene? And was that was that a pain to shoot? Was that a horrible shoot, or was that pretty easy? Like, how did that bathtub scene go with the claw coming up between the legs?
I got to work that morning, and I guess I wasn't paying attention to the schedule. But they're like, "Oh, today we're doing the bathtub scene," and I knew that we were doing it because the night before I had actually asked myself, like, how am I going to do that nursery rhyme, and how am I going to sing that song in the bathtub? It's so awkward. And anyway, so I worked on that a lot, like how I was going to sing that little tune, and I hadn't really thought about the mechanics of how the bathtub would be constructed. But so when I got to work, they had built a very large box out of plywood. I think it was lined with plastic. And at the top of the box was probably 8-9 feet tall, was just the frame of a bathtub, and the bottom was cut out. So from the top, second story, it looked just like a bathtub, but if you look through the bottom of the bathtub, it went all the way 9 feet down. And we had a scuba diver it was Jim Doyle, who was the designer of all the makeup, of all the special effects, in a scuba suit, full tanks, and a Freddy glove. And so he sat under the water all day long. His day was a lot worse than mine. And Wes was sitting right next to the bathtub, and whenever he wanted Jim to stick the hand up, he would bang on the side of the bathtub, and then Jim would go like that, over and over and over again. And it was a long day. If you actually analyze the scene itself, you'll see there's about at least 6 angles that are shot, and so we had to do the same thing just literally all day long. And because this was a plywood box and it wasn't insulated, the water got cold very frequently, so I was getting out, they would put more warm water in. It probably held a good 300 or 400, maybe 300 gallons of water, so they were constantly boiling water on the side of the set, and other people were making bubbles, and if Wes thought the bubbles weren't, fulsome enough, he'd be like, more bubbles, it was very funny, and my personal sense of modesty was always being challenged, and Wes was also a very modest person, so both of us were embarrassed at the same time he didn't want me to be embarrassed, and I didn't want him to be embarrassed, but I was wearing kind of a bathing suit, flesh-colored, bathing suit, so it wasn't so bad. And then the part of the scene where I get pulled into the water, that was done on another day at a swimming pool somewhere in California, and I wasn't part of that. That was a body double in that part of the scene.
So that's how they did it.
Yeah, it was very complicated, and that's why it's such a great scene, because it has so many different elements to it, and it's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. Yeah. But when I did get pulled under the water from the top of the, when you see me get pulled into the water, that was real. I was getting pulled into this 9-foot, box of water.
Like Jaws, yeah.
It was really
wonderful.
It was a fun day in some ways.
Yeah.
In other aspects, it was hard. It was hard work, and of course, I was pruned. My skin was just completely pruned. I probably spent a good 4 or 5 hours all told in the water that day.
Nice. Well, it's an iconic moment in an iconic movie.
Thank you. It's a lot of curiosity about that scene, and Jacques Aitken, the cinematographer, came up with a lot of the ideas for how to make it that, with the angles between my legs and the angle of the glove, and it was very groundbreaking in a lot of ways.
It's a great practical effect and movie magic. Well, thank you very much, Heather.
And do it in your own bathtub.